Hello internet users, and welcome back to Hidden Content, the show where we look at things in games that require odd and elaborate methods to reach. This time we're going to be taking a look at something a bit more unconventional in terms of hidden content. Something that clearly isn't a developer-intended secret or unlockable, but is something interesting that you can pull off by going really out of your way. Today we're going to be discussing some crazy things that you can do in the original Pokemon games, that most people never would have thought to try, and how the sequels attempted to prevent you from doing it again. Over the years, there have been many instances of games being released with glitches, programming oversights, or just plain bad decision-making. In the Atari port of Impossible Mission, true to its name, it was impossible to pick up certain key items, rendering the game uncompletable. In Bubble Bobble Revolution for the DS, you had to play through a total of 100 stages, but somehow, testers failed to notice that the boss on level 30 couldn't even spawn, sealing off more than half of the entire game. And on the 3DO game, The Horde, the game would, without even asking you, delete your save data for other games in order to make room for itself. And these are only just a few examples from the "how the heck did they let that happen" list that is still unfortunately growing to this day. Issues like this can understandably be pretty infuriating when encountered. After all, it wasn't our fault. We weren't the ones who decided to release something in such a poor state. But what happens when we turn that idea around? What about when it's the player who makes everything go horrifyingly wrong? I'm talking about using the game's own mechanics to put yourself in a situation so crazy that you can't blame anyone but yourself for allowing it to happen. And that's just what we're going to do for the Gen 1 Pokemon games. We're going to put ourselves into a state where the game is impossible to finish, and you'll have no choice but to restart with a new save file. Well, actually, it should be noted that you can just technically get yourself out of these by connecting with another game, hence the almost that's written in the title. I put that there so people won't yell at me, but this is the internet, so they will anyway. So with that being said, the only rule that I'm going to put in place here is that aid from any kind of external device is not allowed. We're doing this with just the game and the game alone. No trading with another Game Boy, or transferring prize Pokemon from Pokemon Stadium. It should also go without saying that using something like a Game Shark would make it simple to undo any kind of craziness that happens. Another thing to keep in mind is that I'm not going to bother with things such as the walk through walls glitch, where you can trap yourself forever by saving in certain places. I am well aware that these games are incredibly broken, but the purpose of this video isn't to show off a bunch of those glitches. Alright, now let's begin with a new game. There are 3 different situations that we're going to set up here. The first of which involves the Safari Zone, and can only be done on red and blue. I'll get into why it doesn't work on yellow version a little later. As most veteran fans know, it is a requirement to enter the Safari Zone in order to obtain HM3, Surf, and the Warden's Teeth key item, which is later exchanged for HM4, Strength. Both of these items are absolutely necessary in order to progress further into the game. So therefore, if we make it impossible for us to even go into the Safari Zone, then the rest of the game is locked off to us. But the question now is, how do we do that? Well, you see, in order to enter, an entry fee must first be paid at the front gate. Game Freak may not have realized it, but by requiring us to pay money to reach some important key items, they've exposed a glaring design flaw within the game. Well, not to say that this is the only one. This is Generation 1 we're talking about here. What we're going to do next is remove every possible way to earn money from our save file. Here is a list of how to go about it. First, you must defeat every possible trainer. Wild encounters do not earn you money, only trainer battles do. And since the games of the first generation do not allow you to rebattle the trainers you defeat, winning against all of the ones that are available up to this point in the game cuts off one method for us to get more money. The only exception to this rule is the Elite Four, who can be rebattled infinitely. However, they're at the end of the game and are the last trainers you need to face in order to finish it. So you're obviously not going to be able to reach them, meaning we don't have to worry about them at all. Number 2. Find and throw away every possible item. Another way to make money in these games is to sell useless items that you don't need. One thing that we often forget though, is that these scattered items are not infinite. So if you manage to pick all of them up, including the invisible ones that the item finder is meant to help you locate, and then toss all of them, you will have removed yet another potential way for you to refill your wallet later on. Number 3. Pick up all of the free coins at the game corner and waste them. At the Celadon Game Corner, it is possible to exchange coins for prizes in the form of Pokemon and TMs. In order to earn coins, you can either continue to buy more until you have enough for what prize you want, or you can play the slots until you earn enough. And in order to play the slots, you need to put coins into the machine. It would be possible to sell the TMs you can get here for money, so we need to make it so that we can no longer play the slots at all. Since our end goal is to end up without enough money to enter the Safari Zone, we don't have to worry about the fact that coins can be bought, since we won't be able to afford them at that point anyway. However, by talking to some of the patrons here, we can bum some free coins off of them just once. As well, there are some hidden coins on the floor. We need to collect all of these, and then waste all of them, to ensure that we cannot possibly get lucky and win enough coins to potentially exchange for a TM that we could sell. It's not exactly a guaranteed way for us to get money later on, but it's still a possibility that needs to be removed all the same. Number 4. Don't have a Meowth. Often forgotten about, something unique about the Pokemon Meowth and its evolution Persian is the fact that they had a signature move called Payday. For those that don't know, using this move adds a small amount of money to what you will earn at the end of the battle. This even includes wild encounters, where you normally cannot get money at all. Something to also be aware of is that in the first games, Payday was also actually a TM that could be taught to a handful of Pokemon. This TM is the only way to teach the move to any Pokemon other than Meowth or Persian, as they are the only ones that can learn it via leveling up. But we don't need to worry about that, as the TM actually requires us to have Surf to reach, and even if we could get to it, we'd just throw it away like we did with every other item. You're probably thinking right now though, well, what's to stop me from catching a Meowth later on then? And that brings us to the next step. Get rid of all your money. Now that we've completed all of the above, we now have no way to acquire any more cash. All we need to do now is get rid of the money we have on us. This is very simple to do. Just go into any shop in the game, buy a bunch of items, and immediately sell them back for less than what you paid. Repeat this over and over and you'll be completely broke in no time. At this point, it's now impossible for us to buy any more Pokeballs, meaning that we couldn't go and catch a Meowth now even if we wanted to. Let's congratulate ourselves. We've just ruined an entire save game of Pokemon. We can't battle any more trainers, we can't sell any more items, and we can't go catch the one Pokemon that could help get us out of it. An important item that we need is trapped within an area that we cannot enter without paying a fee. We're completely stuck. If that isn't something to celebrate, then I don't know what is. The only possible way to undo this madness, like I mentioned before, is through connecting and trading with another game. In this case, sending a Pokemon that knows Payday to your game is the only hope. And if you're wondering, this setup does not work on the Game Boy Advance remakes. Items such as the Versus Seeker were added so that you can rebattle previously defeated trainers. Thus, you will never be without a way to earn money in those games. I also mentioned earlier that this method does not work in Yellow version. It seems that Game Freak was actually aware that the player could get stuck like this. So in Yellow, if you don't have any money when you try and enter the Safari Zone, but continue to try and enter, the man at the entrance will take pity on you and allow you to enter anyway. However, if you get in this way, you will only be given a single Safari Ball. It seems obvious to me that this was added as a workaround, so that if the player was somehow terrible enough to end up in this situation, they still always had the possibility to get Surf. It seriously blows my mind to see this. After all these years, I thought I knew these games inside out by now, yet I never knew about this being in Yellow until I started making this video. As they say, you learn something new every day. Alright, it's time to move on to the next impossible situation. Luckily, by doing the one for the Safari Zone, we've pretty much already set this one up. It requires all of the same steps, but this time, the place we're getting locked out of is Saffron City. You see, in order to get into the city, we need to buy a drink from a vending machine, and then give it to one of the 4 guards. Afterward, we'll be allowed to come and go as we please. As for why they won't let you through in the first place, I still have no idea on that one. The problem once again arises with the fact that we have to spend money in order to obtain a drink. So just like with the Safari Zone, we can't progress if we happen to be dirt poor. And since we can't get in, it's not possible to obtain all of the badges, meaning we can no longer beat the game. Despite the change in Yellow version to the Safari Zone, it seems that they didn't alter anything here, so this impossible situation can be done on all 3 games. In the remakes, the drinks that you need to give the guards was changed to tea, that you receive from an old woman in Celadon. It counts as a key item and cannot be bought or sold, removing the requirement of spending money to get into Saffron. Clearly they didn't want to take any chances here. Even though they added the Versus Seeker, they wanted to make sure that there was no way for you to be stuck. When I first played the remakes, I always wondered why this was changed, as it didn't make much of a difference to me. It's kind of neat to finally see the reasoning behind it. And now we come to the last situation we're going to trap ourselves in. Pay close attention, folks, because we're going to learn how to strand ourselves on Cinnabar Island. First, we're going to need to start a new game. In order to be stuck on Cinnabar, we're going to have to be able to reach it, which requires us to have surf. And if you recall from a few moments ago, we can't really get that anymore. So obviously we're going to have to play through the game again, all the way up until we have surf. Once we have that, reach Cinnabar, and the fun can begin. The first step is defeat every trainer on the island. Same idea as before, we want to make sure that we cannot later battle anyone to get any money. Number 2 is to once again pick up and toss all of the items on the island. Number 3, release all but one of your Pokemon. Make sure that the Pokemon that you are left with is unable to learn Fly or Surf, ensuring that you have no escape option. It wouldn't be until Generation 3 that the games would start preventing you from releasing all of your HM users. What we are trying to do on Cinnabar right now is often thought to be the exact reason that such a feature was implemented. Number 4. Heal at Cinnabar's Pokemon Center. When you run out of Pokemon in battle, you will be brought back to the last Pokemon Center that you used. By healing at the one on Cinnabar, we've ensured that we cannot get away by letting our last Pokemon get knocked out by the wild ones in the Pokemon Mansion. This also affects the moves Dig and Teleport, which would also bring you back to your most recently visited center. Number 5. Do not pick up the fishing rods. Over the course of the game, there are 3 fishing rods that you can get while on your journey. All of them are completely optional, and you should make sure that you don't get any of them. Key items cannot be thrown away, so once you have them, there is no way to be rid of them for good. The reason why we don't want to have them is simple. Cinnabar Island is, of course, surrounded by water. If we're able to fish, it would be a snap to find another Pokemon that is able to learn Surf. From what I could find, none of the wild Pokemon in the mansion are able to learn Surf, so fishing is the only way to catch one. However, if we do like we did before and get rid of all of our money, then we wouldn't be able to afford Pokeballs to catch anything anyway. So technically speaking, I guess you could go with one of 2 options for this step. Number 6. Make sure to release the fossil Pokemon. While playing through the game normally, one item that you end up receiving is one of 2 fossils in Mount Moon. It is on Cinnabar that we have access to a facility that can restore this fossil into a Pokemon. The 2 fossil Pokemon you can get are Kabuto and Omanyte, both of which are able to learn Surf. Like I said before, you can't toss key items, so the only option you have is to revive the fossil and then release the Pokemon right away. And there you have it. After a series of incredibly poor decisions, we've doomed ourselves to a life stranded on an island that, if you'll recall, gets destroyed by a volcanic eruption by the time Gold and Silver rolls around. I just put a child in harm's way for the sake of a YouTube video, and I am okay with that. Now that your game is set up like this, try giving it to your friends and watch them struggle to figure a way out of it. Alternatively, you could also borrow your friend's game and do this to them. But don't actually do that because that's kind of mean. Once again though, I have to mention that the only hope of getting out of this comes from connecting with another game. You can either have someone trade you a Pokemon that knows Surf, or you can get one of the prize Pokemon from Pokemon Stadium that is able to learn the move sent to you. It's really strange to see what you can do in some games. Of course, being forced to restart a game because of a design flaw is something that should never be fun. But in a case like this, where even the worst player in the world likely wouldn't end up in this scenario, it's more of an enjoyable novelty than anything else. And while I did say that they fix some of these issues in future games, people have still found more ways to trap themselves in the later generations as well. It just goes to show, even if it wasn't an intended reward from the developer, there are still many hidden treasures to be found across many different titles. Tell me your thoughts down below. Also be sure to tell me about any info I might have missed for any one of these methods. Of course, annotations are gone now, which means I can't add any corrections on screen, so I'll just look like an idiot forever. Thank you all for watching, and see you all next time.